Ready for your weekly tech fix? Want to know how technology sets us free? Well, get ready because here it comes. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, entrepreneur and technophile Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Woo! Here we go for another Sovryn Tech midweek release of Sovryn Tech. How can you beat that? And you will get a double load along with this episode. There is a release, a full release of, it's only a partial release of, I was on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, which is, I hope I got that name right, which is something that Daryl Perry is, he's the head of, and that he's the host for the show, and he graciously had me on just recently, and so that will be in the feed, and you can listen to it as essentially a Sovryn Tech special of sorts. I was on the second hour of the show. He runs a 2-hour live show, and so it will just be the hour that I was on, but it's there for your enjoyment. Some interesting topics came up, including, some kind of personal things about me on my end of things. But anyway, so that's up there, and then you have this episode, and this episode is a doozy. And I guarantee, remember that cliffhanger I left everybody with Game Talk last week? We will finish that, guaranteed. But anyway, our opening story, this is pretty interesting stuff. Recently, over the past couple weeks, of course, right now we're in August 2013, DefCon has been going on, which is kind of a hacker, it's not kind of, it is a hacker convention, and always just very entertaining. I've been to a few, along with Black Hats, which is another convention, and they're just lots of fun, really. I enjoy them endlessly. I didn't go to this one, but, what happens is a lot of times at these conventions is people will come out and say, okay, hey, look, we cracked this code or we did this, and then everybody's scrambling to somehow fix it. It's pretty interesting and a really unique environment to see in the world. And this story coming from this year's DefCon is from CNET, and it's car hacking code released at DefCon. Oh, yeah. Car computer hacking hit the gas on the first morning of DefCon 21 as hackers revealed how they took over two of the most popular cars in America. You may hate parallel parking, but you're going to hate it even more when somebody commandeers control of your car with you in it. That was the scary scenario painted over the first 2 hours at the 21st annual DefCon Hacker Conference. Car hacking is definitely coming, said Zaz of Canotophic Design, who presented on how to hack autonomous cars. Zaz's talk on vulnerabilities that autonomous autos will face followed a fast-paced explanation by well-known computer security experts Charlie Miller and Christopher Valasek of how they spent the past 10 months hacking the self-driving features of two popular cars. Miller, Valasek, and Zaz all spoke to the standing room-only crowds of more than 1,000 people. While car hacking made a big splash at DefCon in 2010 and 2011, those hacks were not publicly documented. We want it to take 2 months for everybody to do this, Miller said to loud applause from the packed house. Before going into their hacking explanation, Miller and Valasek admitted that they were not hardware hackers and had little experience on hardware basics like splicing wires, but they only had one requirement for their test car, that it be able to drive itself. From there, hilarity ensued. Instead of following Toyota's guide to removing the dash of their test 2010 Prius, they used a crowbar. Subsequent videos and photos showed them driving around with a laptop wired to the open dash of a car, much to the amusement of the crowd. And there's a video on here that you can check out, and you can go to the show notes at sovryntech.com or soundcloud.com/sovryntech. The pair also tested a 2010 Ford Escape. Pre-recorded video demos of the hacks showed Miller and Valasek disabling the car's brakes, jerking the steering wheel back and forth while the car was in motion, accelerating, taking full control of the steering wheel, yanking the seatbelt tight, turning off the engine, turning interior and exterior lights on and off, honking the horn, and making the console show a full tank of gas when it wasn't. Surprisingly, neither wore a helmet. At one point, the car wouldn't start, and they had to get it taken to the Toyota dealer for repairs. It turns out, Valasek said, that they had blown up the inverter. They said they couldn't fix the car because they'd never seen this problem before. The two detailed much of the nitty-gritty of their hacking work, covering how they gained physical access to the car's computer and how they figured out how to program the car's computer. The documentation that they will be releasing in the next few weeks sounds comprehensive, totaling 101 pages of code and data. Zaz spent his talk in the next hour on the future of automation. Self-driving cars, he told, are essentially robots and will be particularly susceptible to the same kind of hacks as less complicated robots. Many of these vulnerabilities will be related directly to directly hacking or indirectly altering the sensors that allow a car to navigate the road without causing accidents. Automated vehicles of all sorts, from person-carrying cars to small drones, rely on a multitude of sensors such as GPS, LiDAR, cameras, millimeter wave radar, digital compasses, wheel encoders, initial measurement units, and onboard maps. There are two kinds of sensor attacks, Saad said. Denial attacks prevent the sensor from recovering data, while spoofing causes the sensor to retrieve bad data. Each of the sensors on a car or drone can be successfully attacked in several low-cost, low-effort ways. A GPS sensor, he said, can be compromised by purchasing or building a cheap GPS jammer. Maps are particularly at risk. You can't have your robot occasionally blowing through a red light, he said, to much snickering from the audience. Zaz, as well as Miller and Valasek, kept returning to a particular point during their separate hour-long presentations. The goal of hacking cars isn't to cause widespread havoc, but to make them safer. Now that we've released the data, you can think about how to stop these attacks, Miller said. And echoing Miller, Zaz also highlighted safety concerns. When I talk about exploits and countermeasures, I want you to think about countermeasures, he said. Ford and Toyota have both said that their focus is on preventing wireless hacks, but wireless technology is hardly a bastion of security. We may be approaching an era when the car itself could be to blame for crashes. And, there's humorous things, and I'm sure the video, that was shown at DefCon 21 and the whole presentation, all of it was very funny because you're sitting in a room of hackers and they're just, showing this wild stuff going on where they're literally controlling a car via laptop. And, let's get out of the humor. And I suppose maybe this should have been done for Hacker Stories, but I thought that this was just so important. It really needed to be the lead story. And hearing this, some may be reminded of perhaps a movie, a not so great movie, overall, and based on, quote unquote, based on one of the greatest books of all time, that being I, Robot, and the movie being the one in the 2000s that starred Will Smith. Movie had very little to do with the actual book by Isaac Asimov, which is just a timeless classic and should have been made into a movie with a Harlan Ellison screenplay that you can purchase the book of. Anyway. In that movie, there is a point, and I think this happened in Minority Report too with Tom Cruise. In that movie, there is a point where Will Smith's character kind of has this obsession with the 1990s, which I can appreciate that. I have an obsession with the 1990s. And so he buys like Converse shoes, basketball shoes, and he has a 93, I think, Kawasaki Ninja motorcycle. And there's a point where the robots take over the country or the world or whatever, and the robots turn off all the cars in the world, or at least in the country or in that city or whatever, but they turn off all the cars and nobody can get anywhere, and there's just traffic jams everywhere. And Will Smith, is just cruising in his 1993 Kawasaki Ninja because it doesn't have like a computer that can act, that can be hacked. It has this I don't even think a 93 Kawasaki Ninja has a computer in it. That's been a very new development for motorcycles in general. I could be wrong about that though. But anyway, the point is that there isn't this certain type of computer in there, that could be, controlled, or that does so much, with the vehicle. And, there's a lot of people who talk about how OnStar can turn off your car if it gets stolen. There's all these technologies where cars, can be controlled. And here it is at DEF CON. They're doing it with, a Ford, I think it was a 2010 Ford Focus and a 2010 Toyota Prius. And I don't blame people for being very skeptical and being very scared when they see that. Because, especially of people that would say, listen to this show. Because as anarchists, or if you're, whatever, if you just want to call yourself a libertarian or something, or whatever you want to call yourself, you're a person that probably, if you're listening to this show, you probably don't trust the government. And you probably feel that we're in a police state, if not entering one, whatever. And so for these, for the ability to exist, for a major means of transportation, as in a major means to travel and get away or get to safety, to be able to be controlled, while that sounds like it's conspiracy theory, it's not anymore. And I remember when people started talking about this, and they talked about this a long time ago, that, hey, you know what? No, the police are going to be able to turn off your car. There's not going to be car chases anymore. They're just going to turn it off. And at what point... and then you say, well, you don't have anything to worry about because you're not doing anything wrong. Well, it's getting to the point in this country where you just say something. You say the wrong thing and you're in trouble. So effectively, you say the wrong thing and your car gets turned off. And then, okay, you're on foot. But that severely limits you if you're on the run. For doing nothing, for harming no one. And, I may not be doing the best job of explaining the seriousness of this. But I had heard people talk about this 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. In 1996, there was a major change in cars, in the computers that were put into automobiles. And you can, it's 1996 because when you go, if you're in the United States and you go to, in various states, Florida may be one that doesn't require this, and maybe Montana, I think. I could be wrong about Florida, but anyway, you have to go get your car inspected. Now, if your car is pre-1996, it doesn't have to be hooked up to the computer at the garage, to be inspected and to make sure all the emissions are good and all that stuff. Now, that 1996 computer, very early on, companies like J.C. Whitney, which, that they sell a bunch of accessories for cars and all that, as well as other types of motor vehicles. They sold a device that was for parents. And what it was is that it told, you put this chip onto you connected it to the ODB2 port underneath, which is generally underneath the steering wheel, or on the driver's side underneath the dash. And you could hook up this chip, this device, and that device would tell you where the car went, how long it was being driven for. It gave you every piece of information about the car. So the bottom line is that since 1996, cars have been storing information on what the cars are doing. Now, like I said, this is scary. This is why they brought it up. They're saying, we're not showing you how to hack cars so you can hack cars. We're showing you how to keep people from hacking cars. Okay. But I gotta admit, I have a hard time believing that anyone's going to do anything other than hackers, who are concerned about control, personal control and privacy, that'll do anything about making sure that these cars don't do that. And you have to understand, okay, with these new computers, ever since computers started getting put into cars, which is around 1982 when that started happening, more and more of what a car does was not directly controlled by you, the driver. It was controlled by the computer. It used to be that when you push down on the accelerator of a car, it would literally pull on a wire that would throttle the engine. Not anymore. Now what happens is that when you push down on the accelerator, I've heard that there may be cars that it's still true that when you put your pedal to the metal, you're still directly controlling it, but I I have a hard time believing that, because with emissions controls, there has to be oxygen sensors, and that, all this stuff has to be detected by law. So I do debate that. I should have looked into that before I did the show. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The bottom line, 99% of cars, possibly 100% of cars that have been made since, 1996, the acceleration of the car is controlled by the computer. And so there's a middleman there. You push down on the accelerator, and then the computer tells the engine to throttle up. It's not a direct line. Or at least not as direct as it once was. So, you don't have control. The computer is in control of the car. And so if you can control the computer like these hackers did at DefCon, you're in trouble. I mean, look at everything. They could even control the seatbelts in the cars, and like tighten them against you. There's nothing about this that isn't terrifying, really. What's the, and I think the question that probably a lot of listeners are asking is, okay, what's the solution? Well, to some degree, the solution is you buy cars that were made before 1996. You can't do anything. You can't really convert these new cars to where the computer doesn't control them. Hopefully some hackers will come out and they'll essentially create firewalls for your car's computer, but you probably won't be able to get your car inspected if it has that firewall built in, or you're going to have to turn it off for a few minutes or something. Who knows? But I see this as a real problem, and the police have no right whatsoever. Nobody has the right to control your car other than you. They just don't. For any reason, they don't have the right. Even if you broke the law, or you're in some kind of chase or something, it's your device. That's for you to use. There's times where it could be right and wrong, but I can't see the case. Nobody can make the case, hey, we need to put in these restrictions on your car, or we need to be able to control it or something. If the option was out there, if we were in a genuine free market and the option existed to where you could buy, a 2014 model car that's had no computer, I'd do it in a heartbeat. And then people say, okay, so it's here's the catch-22, right? Is that, well, but with the computer, that helps with gas mileage and all this jazz, and it helps with, green technology, and Brian Sovryn, Golden Stallion, you love green technology. Yes, okay, I do like green technology, but guess what? The gaffe is that there's a lot of things you can do to a car that don't require a computer at all, to increase your gas mileage. We talked about it a little bit. There was a special I did with Rich Dana, a fantastic special recently, Obsolete Energy, where we talked about this a little bit. There's carburetors that can save a ton of gas. You can do pinholes in the gas line. Now there is an interesting one. There's so many little tricks you can do that don't require a computer at all, to give cars this great gas mileage. And so again, for people to say, and I've been hearing it for 20 years, okay, I'm very into cars. I've been hearing it for a long time, where there's people who said, no, this computer stuff is bullshit. They just want to control your car, and the cops want to turn your car off, or they want to keep you from being able to go really, really fast, like a lot of people in the racing scene, in the red line scene. Okay, that's why they replaced their computers. Now that's an option. But again, with state inspections being required all the time, how long is that going to go on where they allow for that? So yeah, and I don't blame people. I'm half tempted to do the same thing, where I'm just going to, from now on, my cars are going to be pre-96, and eventually we're going to run out of pre-96 cars. But that's how it's going to be, because that's terrifying. That I read the list of all the different things that these hackers could do, and kudos for them for figuring it out and proving that the ability exists. I'm not concerned about the hackers. They're the good guys. It's the people that implement this shit that I'm concerned about. So again, very, very scary, in my opinion. And if someone wants to email me and say, wow, Brian, yeah, okay, you're really on the conspiracy theorist bent, fine, do that. Tell me that, because then I'll accept being a conspiracy theorist in that part. I mean, there's a million things you have to understand with cars. There's so many real conspiracies that in the automobile industry. I mean, there's tons. There's engines that can do 120 miles per gallon that were built in Daytona, Florida in the 70s. There's, the electric car was being designed. You could build an Opel electric car 40 years ago. The electric car is not new. It's just, I think a lot of industries just didn't know how to make money off of it. There's, boy, what else? The whole way, the idea of, now, if you talk to some mechanics in the 80s, car mechanics were, they go to classes to get certification on how to repair cars. They were being told in the 80s that by these companies, by Toyota, by Ford, by all the big name car companies, saying, we plan on replacing you. And we're just going to sell new cars to people all the time. So it's been in design since the 80s. To not, to make it so that cars weren't repairable and to where people just bought new ones, and to where cars weren't worked on. Now, fortunately, that really hasn't worked out, but it's been in the minds of these car companies where, I mean, they build cars are crap today. You can look at some of the posts that Jeffrey Tucker puts up, like on Facebook and Google Plus and wherever, and he talks about it all the time. He says, why does a 2013 Mercedes not drive as well as a 2002 Accord? And it's regulations. It's government regulations. Government regulations are turning the cars into utter crap. It's making them all look the same. I mean, whether it's an aptitude or maybe it's a full-on conspiracy where they just, they want the police to be able to turn off the car so you can't get away. They want it to do Minority Report, where he's trying to, he's on the run, he's the good guy, and they just turn off the car on him. It's there. It's happening. The technology's real. Again, you want to call me a conspiracy theorist, go for it, but I think the facts are really on my side with this one. I'll be back with more. We'll lighten it up a little, quite a bit. This is Brian Sovryn. You're listening to Sovryn Tech.
Once upon a time, long before the dawn of digital technology and social media, analog dinosaurs roamed the earth. Free thinkers relied on underground newspapers to spread their radical ideas. If you thought that underground newspapers were extinct, pick up a copy of Obsolete magazine from Obsolete Press. Each issue of this old-school newsprint tabloid is packed with original DIY articles, counterculture essays, science fiction stories, and artwork by a list of international contributors who are dedicated to smashing the status quo. Obsolete magazine is available from obsolete-press.com, and Obsolete Press offers special discounts to readers who use Bitcoin. Until August 11th, Obsolete Press is running a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign. If you like what you read and want to pledge, look for the link at obsolete-press.com. Social media is great, but Obsolete offers a reading experience unlike anything on the web. The underground newspaper is alive and well. Read Obsolete and get your hands dirty. Tech Roulette. Want to play?
It is time for Tech Roulette, where I cover the stories sent to me through various channels such as sovryntech.com, the email address sovryntech@hush.ai, or even on Twitter, or even direct messaging me on Twitter. Any way I get these stories. So, and this week, we're going to delve into the science here. We opened up with some tech, and obviously we'll be running tech pretty much the rest of the show. But we're going to delve into some science, and it's my kind of science, baby. I mean, my kind. And this is from The Telegraph in the United Kingdom. And the story is, have an orgasm instead of doing a crossword. It's better for your brain, says scientist. I mean, Yeah. I just read the title and I go, wait, I believe it. Anyway, orgasms could be better for our brains than doing a crossword or a Sudoku puzzle, an academic has claimed. The sexual climax gives the whole brain a good workout, rather than just one area of it, Professor Barry Kamasurik said. The sensation can, moreover, block pain and could therefore be used to alleviate the agony of childbirth, among other things, he suggested. Depression, anxiety, and addiction could also benefit if scientists can harness the pleasure-producing mechanism in the brain that produces orgasm and put it to other uses, he believes. Let's read that one again. Depression, anxiety, and addiction could also benefit if scientists can harness the pleasure-producing mechanism in the brain that produces orgasm and put it to other uses, he believes. Lovely. The 72-year-old U.S. researcher has been studying female sexual pleasure since the 1960s, beginning his experiments on rats before moving on to women in 1982. His decades of devotion to a subject that has scandalized some of his fellow academics at Rutgers University in New Jersey has made him something of an evangelist about the power and benefits of the sexual climax. At orgasm, we see a tremendous increase in the blood flow to the brain, he told the Times. So my belief is if it can't be bad. It brings all the nutrients and oxygenation to the brain. So my belief is it can't be bad. It brings all the nutrients and oxygenation to the brain. Mental exercises such as crosswords and Sudoku increase brain activity, but only in relatively localized regions. Orgasm activates the whole. Professor Kamasurik it almost sounds like Kama Sutra, has reached his conclusions after studying female volunteers in his brain scanning laboratory at the university's Department of Psychology, measuring the blood flow in their brains as they climax. For this, the women must lie in a narrow tube called a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine and achieve orgasm despite the clinical surroundings. It is a pioneering science, and there is still much to be learned from it, Professor Kamasurik believes. We know virtually nothing about pleasure, he said. It's important to understand how the brain produces it. What parts of the brain produce such intense pleasure, and can we use that in some way? Okay, tremendous science. I mean, this is high science. Yes, let us figure out exactly, what all these pleasure symptoms do, or, let's figure all this out. And it's interesting, and I'm glad that he's actually studying women, in the matter. I'm reminded when I think of this, I'm reminded of, I think it was in the Matrix Reloaded, which was the second Matrix film in the Matrix trilogy. A fantastic movie. I love the Matrix Reloaded, and I love Matrix Revolutions too. Anyway, in that there's a scene where the Merovingian gives a woman a piece of cake that in the Matrix accesses like all the code that gives her an orgasm. It's not explicitly stated, but anyway, it shows like, when you see it in like Neo Matrix view, there's just this explosion of code inside the woman, and it's pretty hot and interesting, and it makes me think of this. But I'm glad they're using women, because as far as, studying women and sex and pleasure and orgasms in general, it's been a non-science. No one, like, it's been taboo. It's like, well, who cares? Oh, I mean, for centuries, since science had been done in modernity, nobody's cared about, how women orgasm, their experience during sex. I mean, it's amazing that in the early part of the 20th century, that the vibrator, was essentially invented. That's fantastic. But it took that long. And again, it was all because, who cares? And they blamed it all on hysteria, and that women were crazy, and that they just needed to orgasm, and that got rid of their craziness and all this stuff, all of which is patent nonsense. And we all know that. It's just, It's unbelievable. If you look into the history, go to Wikipedia and type in the word hysteria. Okay, and I don't mean the Def Leppard album, as great as an album as that is. Holy shit, is that a great album? And look into the history of the mental quote unquote disease called hysteria, and it's actually only been renamed recently. It's not like they've gotten rid of it, but they're still saying women are just like naturally crazy and they have to orgasm, to relieve that craziness. So again, I'm very, very glad that someone is taking absolutely seriously the female experience during sex, because science, the bulk of science around the world, doesn't care, because to a lot of them, women are second-class citizens. Face the facts. Seriously, I mean, you think scientists in Saudi Arabia care? Yes, there are scientists in Saudi Arabia. I'm amazed at that too. So anyway, I'm very, very glad that this is actually happening. But I mean, they're talking about, okay, we can study this, how could we figure out some way to work on depression with this? I mean, and there's so many studies for men and women that, talk about, how great how healthy a tremendous sex life is. And this is, I mean, people didn't just know this anyway. No, because it was shoved down. It's funny because we've been aware for a long time, actually, to some degree, just that all the synapses just fire during orgasm. And yet no one's come to the conclusion that, hey, what a great brain workout. No, because again, it's been stuffed down. And I'm impressed. I love the fact that, I mean, this guy's a 17-year-old scientist. Phenomenal. A 72-year-old scientist. I mean, that's fantastic. Because, he's pretty much saying social conservatism be damned. So I'm, anyway, it's kind of, I'm being very serious about all this. I mean, it's serious stuff. It really is. But why I can just picture, and seriously, like even just the headline of this story, just picture the bulk. I mean, it was written for reaction, the headline of the story, because there's not, admittedly, the story itself doesn't share a whole lot of info, I mean, there's links here that you can check out, and look a little more into it. But there's not a whole lot of like straight on info here. A lot of it just sounds like theoretical and kind of guesswork as far as, can this work? And so, now newspapers do this, blogs do this. I mean, even podcasts do this. I create provocative titles for each episode of the show, as a matter of fact. But I mean, have an orgasm instead of doing a crossword. It's better for your brain, says scientist. I mean, you can just see so many people that are just like, oh my God, I can't believe that society's ending. Western civilization is over. They're saying that we should have orgasms instead of doing the morning crossword in the newspaper. I mean, really, am I crazy for thinking that there's probably a ton of people that are just like shocked, and that their jaws just slack at the very notion of that title? I don't think that's crazy. By any means. And and just the idea of the science, I mean, it does make perfect sense that so much of the brain is firing, perhaps more so than any other time. Now, granted, like I said, this is something that's kind of been known for a while. Like even before you'd think neuroscience was a thing, this has been known. And this gets into some, for some people, decades ago, this gets into some very mystical matters, not necessarily Hermeticism, but it gets into some pretty mystical stuff to where, you have what's called sex magic, which has been around forever, but particularly in the 20th century, it had a real rise. And a lot of that came from the fact that, the belief that, okay, yeah, this is when the brain like really lets go. And that's when you're connecting with the divine. Now, I don't know that you're connecting with the divine. You're certainly connecting with each other in an absolutely beautiful way, but totally scientific and real way. But that's where this whole thing kind of comes from, is that there's power in having an orgasm. Now, obviously the mystical aspects of that I think are nonsense, but the reality, I think, is true. And perhaps the mysticism, the whole idea of sex magic just bore out of the very real fact that having an orgasm is great for your brain. It could make you smarter. It can, help your mood. There's a million things that it can do. And again, all theoretical now, although it's being scientifically, or attempting to be scientifically shown, thankfully, at Rutgers. But how terrible to hold people down from something, from the possibility of, being, I don't want to say better human beings, but for being healthier human beings. How terrible. I read this, and again, we're doing a whole lot of supposition, but what the hell? Wouldn't that be awesome to find out Alzheimer's could be cured by having, sex 3-4 times a day? Almost every day, if not every day. Why not? That'd be fantastic. Wouldn't it be funny? I mean, here's the thought. Again, we're going way left field here. Okay. But, again, why not? We're having fun. That's part of Sovryn Tech, is that we get to, we get to explore, sometimes the deeper side of technology and science. But we're always careful to separate supposition from fact. But wouldn't it be something to find out that maybe a whole lot of mental diseases comes from Puritanism? What if 100 years down the line, someone picks up, Professor Komisarik's work, and finally just hammers it down and says, yeah, you know what? This lack of orgasms is that's really hurting us. Yeah, I'd believe it. I have a bias. I want to believe it because, I'm okay with everybody being sex crazed, but, I think it'd be interesting, to find that out. And again, I don't feel that this is necessarily new, that maybe some, you go into the history of things, and I think there's people who kind of had an idea that this kind of happened. You look at the Enlightenment. Let's go back to the beginning of science even. Even though they didn't, clearly they didn't care much about women, I think, if you look into like Rosicrucianism and alchemy, and a lot of these, kind of like these Enlightenment cults, I guess you could call them, they all, there were some that preached like a chastity, but there were many, many more that preached a very somewhat of a real libertinism, and they felt that gave them, that enlightened them. And you know what? It's not called the Enlightenment because people were stupid. It's called the Enlightenment by everybody because suddenly we started figuring shit out. And so, correlation is not causation, but hey, who knows? I mean, I wouldn't mind. In fact, I'd love a nice hot piece of fiction that talked about the fact that, yeah, well, since Isaac Newton had, rampant sex, that he figured out gravity, and he figured out because his brain had such a wonderful workout. He was hanging out with what's his name, Francis Dashwood, right? Was it Dashwood? Who Fate C.K. Voldras, the Hellfire Club, do what thou wilt. One of the original libertines in society. Who knows? And it's interesting. I want to recommend something actually while we're talking about this. If you want to talk about like Western civilization and Puritanism. and again, please bear in mind, in reality, and you can look this up, this guy, that wrote that's doing all this research is, and the story talks about it, is being full on attacked by his peers and by, other various news organizations and, science papers saying, why I can't believe you're doing this. This is crazy. I can't believe you're, that this is even being, this is being studied even. But if you want to read a great book about the influence of Puritanism and how actually people, even in the United States, were not so Puritan, and that a lot of the people that actually built, quote unquote, that country up, that built up the United States, were very much libertine. There's a book by Thaddeus Russell called Renegade History of the United States. And it talks about, well, it gives you, if you want to see culture, how culture really was, how things really were, and how culture forced other ththings to be. This is the book to check out. I totally recommend it. I may do it as a pick of the week somewhere down the line, because it's a tremendous historical read, but it's so important. In fact, Thaddeus Russell was a speaker at the Liberty Forum in 2013, and large in part, I think, due to that book, because it was so damning of what people believe how things should be, the Puritan work ethic, this lack of sexuality, the whole thing, as to where it needs to be set free. And you find out that the movers and shakers in pretty much every country did set it free. And hopefully, when we find out that orgasms are one of the healthiest things to ever happen to humans, we'll all get set free. This is Brian Sovryn, and I'll be back with more.
Wow! Oh. It's a website of the week.
It is time. Site of the week. Oh, we had a little technical glitch there. And this week's website, this is interesting. This website, again, website of the week is where I find an interesting, website of some kind, and, and I share it with my listeners. It's a lot of fun. A lot of people have emailed me and said, wow, thank you for sharing that. That was, really, really useful. And I don't know how necessarily useful this website is this week, but it is a statement. It is a strong statement, and it's a statement that I like to make and am very interested in. And it's gtmoclock.com. And it's gitmoclock.com. And the tagline for the website, holding President Obama to his promise to release the 86 cleared for release detainees at Guantanamo Bay. And so it's a huge clock, and saying when is essential, because one of the big things that quote unquote President Obama did was say that he was going to shut down Gitmo and get those people out of there. And guess what? It never happened. It never happened. In fact, I'll admit, because at the time when that promise was being made, I wasn't so hard of, I wasn't so stringent of an anarchist at the time, and so I was still okay with voting, which I'm not now. I think voting is to me is just ridiculous. But at the time, if I fully believed, and I was that close, I was very, very close to voting for Obama, simply because he was going to close down Guantanamo Bay. I was in the military. I've been to Guantanamo Bay. I know the deal. I know what's going on in there. And it's disgusting. I know how these people are being treated. It's inhuman. No one deserves that. It should be shut down. And, he didn't keep the promise. I did not end up voting for him, but it was that important to me for that hellhole to never see to never be touched or opened again, to go away completely, that I would have voted for, really, quite frankly, a very evil man. But anyway, nothing has happened of it. Now, in fact, there's people legally cleared to be released from there, and they have not been released. And the clock as of this date says 81 days, 7 hours, 16 minutes, 12 seconds since the promise in a major speech on national security on May 23rd. President Obama promised to begin releasing the 86 prisoners still held at Guantanamo Bay who were cleared to leave by his interagency task force in January 2010, but are still held. This site keeps track of the number of days since then that these men continue to be held captive, away from their families, and notes how many have been released. And then there's a big number. It says 0 men released from Gitmo. And, there you go. I mean, it says the point that, look, this guy doesn't keep his word. And maybe it's something, maybe it's a website you can use to share with, some of your friends or acquaintances that are still of the political persuasion to say, hey, look, this doesn't work. We were told that these guys are cleared and, they're not being released. Well, they're terrorists. And what? So because, you stepped on their backyard, you got to lock them up in this dump and torture them? Anyway, check it out, gtmoclock.com. I think it's pretty cool. I'd have like a monitor where it just keeps showing it maybe at my work or something. I'll be back with more.
Time now for 90 Seconds on Sex with Dr. Paul.
A listener wants to know why semen gets clumpy, stringy, and sticky when it's in water. Like when a guy masturbates in the shower and the semen sticks to the floor, or it sticks to any hair that's collected over the shower drain. Or when a guy masturbates in the bath and the semen forms little clumps and sticks to his skin and body hair. When semen first comes out of the penis, it's hydrophobic, which means it hates water. So even though it's a liquid, when fresh semen makes contact with water, it will form clumps, a little like the bubbles in lava lamps, but nowhere near as cool. Now, these clumps are semen's way of protecting as much of itself as it can from the water. Now, you can see this if you ejaculate into a glass of water. Your friends will be amazed. Now, these sticky semen clumps will stick to your skin or shower floor, or to the hair in the shower drain, which is why if you share a shower with other people, it's only right to clean up the shower drain if your clumpy semen has collected there. Now, it's only if semen makes contact with water soon after a guy is ejaculating that it will clump up and stay clumped up. Otherwise, semen will actually liquefy or get watery all on its own in about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, women know about this because semen becomes watery and starts dripping out of their vagina soon after intercourse.
For more, visit 90secondsonsex.com.
It is time for listener emails where I cover, questions that get asked to me in general, be it through email, sovereigntech@hush.ai, or through sovereigntech.com, where you can, not totally anonymously, don't have to have an account of any kind or a Tumblr account or something to be able to, message me on there. And again, I will keep you anonymous, okay, unless you specifically state that you want to be, that you want to be mentioned. But yeah, so I'll keep you totally anonymous, and, you can ask me anything. It doesn't even have to be technology related, quite frankly. You can ask me about, whatever. I've had some listener emails where I talked about stuff. I mean, yeah. What was it? The Book of Enoch. People ask me about, I try to cover it all. Because, I'll admit, actually, one of my goals in life is to be a polymath. Maybe you're just born one, but I've been trying. One of my very first goals that I set for myself when I was young was to learn all that is learnable. So yeah. Now, can one do that in the normal average human lifespan? No. Can anyone do that in a million years? Probably not. So, but I try to ingest as much information as I can. I generally, want it to be factual, but obviously those that listen to the show know I have a great love for fiction. Anyway, the listener email this week was, in summary, I used to tout, recently I got rid of Sovryn Tech's presence on Google+. I do still have, I deleted the Brian Sovryn Google Plus account, which was like my, genuinely was my personal Google Plus, profile. And I, and I got to interact with some listeners and some friends and all that, and that was absolutely wonderful, no doubt about it. But the goals I was trying to achieve with Google Plus just weren't happening, trying to reach out to people outside of the United States, because Google Plus has this tremendous international community. But anyway, that wasn't happening. And admittedly, the name's not Brian Sovryn on it, but I do still have a Google Plus account, and we'll kind of talk about why in the next segment of the show during Software of the Week. But anyway, Sovryn Tech's presence is effectually, it's gone from Google Plus. There was a Google Plus community, which was the Sovryn Tech Balnea, which actually got, some fair use, and I got some great stories from it. So, but, with limited time, for those that don't know, I'm an advertising executive for Free Talk Live, which takes up quite a bit of my time. I also have other things that I engage in that take, significant portions of time. And so I really wanted to hone down how Sovryn Tech was out there and what allowed for the most growth. At some point, anyway, so in summary, the question is that, okay, so there's no more G Plus after I touted, and I did. Boy, did I tout the shit out of Google Plus, no doubt about it. I mean, I actually ran an ad for a while making fun of people that used Facebook, and, why aren't you using Google Plus, essentially, it would say. So, I mean, I really heavily touted Google Plus, and then, I just, 1 week, I just took everything off of there. And, now, my listeners are hearing me talk about Twitter a lot, and recommending using Twitter. And so the question overall was, like, are you just going to be jumping around? I got this from a couple people. Are you just going to jump around from social media to social media, and like this for 6 months, it'll be cool to use this one. Then for the next 6 months, it'll be cool to use this one. No, that's not my plan. And I actually, one of the things I like with what my webpage that I set up, it was sovryntech.com. It's actually a Tumblr page, but with everything that I set up with it, I have built-in Twitter integration, and because Twitter's APIs are a little more open than everybody else's, it's and Twitter in its very nature is very, open and out there. It was very easy to set that up. So I'll keep Twitter just because it's so simple to, like, even SoundCloud automatically will post to Twitter. Tumblr will automatically post the show to Twitter when it comes out. There's no reason not to use it. It literally adds 0 steps to what I do to get Sovryn Tech up in the air. And, at some point, I was just going to say this. At some point, I do want to do a special on, and then this is definitely technology related, on how to make a podcast. Like, what's the most efficient, time efficient, cost efficient way to make a podcast. I've had a few people ask about that, and I will definitely do one of those. But I mean, I'm still learning as I go along. This show's been going on for 7-8 months, not even a year. And it'll be, actually, we're going on a year. It'll be a year in December. So that time frame's coming up. So I guess 9 months maybe we've been running. Anyway, this show hasn't even been going a year, and I've learned a lot on what works and what doesn't. So Twitter definitely works for the show. It works for a lot of reasons. One is that there are just so many people that use Twitter. It has way more users than Google Plus does. Just face facts. It doesn't have as much as Facebook, but that's okay. And anyway, and Twitter, again, was so easy to integrate with everything. And I actually, I've grown to like Twitter's style. So for a podcast, it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. And again, Twitter is very, very unique as far as social media goes. It is not like Google Plus. It is not like Facebook, as to where many could say that Facebook and Google Plus are very much alike. And I think that's true. I think that's fair to say. Google Plus, in my opinion, is still the superior product. No doubts there. But Google Plus and Facebook are very, very similar, as to where Twitter has this really open nature that I like. But then here's the interesting thing, is that something that has such an open nature, if you want to be anonymous or private, it's far more accommodating than Google Plus or Facebook is. And that's one of the things that's intrigued me about it. Now, like I've talked about the Twitter app, how there's really great two-factor authentication now on the Twitter app for iOS and Android. So that's cool. So the security's good. The direct messaging thing works. But here's a lot of the things that I actually really like about Twitter that I've learned over time. So for one, it definitely helps Sovryn Tech, because it's getting Sovryn Tech out there, and the @Sovryn Tech Twitter page is definitely, garnering attention. I've had like the company Moga retweet my stuff. I've had lots of people retweet everything during the Bitcoin 2013 conference. When you go to these conferences, when you go to these tech conferences, they have a hashtag that they give you for Twitter specifically. Even though Facebook and Google Plus also have hashtags, but generally they expect you to use it on Twitter. They have a hashtag that, they'll give you, and you can post stories, or you can post comments or whatever, or questions during during these tech conferences and even other kinds of conferences and conventions. And there's just this running stream, and there's such interconnectability and networking going on, personal networking going on through that. It's tremendous. And so Sovryn Tech really grew for a few reasons, but one of them more recently was actually because I was tweeting during the recent Bitcoin conference that I went to in New York City with the lovely and hyper intelligent Stephanie Murphy of Let's Talk Bitcoin, Pork Therapy, and Free Talk Live fame. And anyway, so there's all that. But then here's the other thing with Twitter that really makes it shine, is that you can use Twitter, and I don't think there's going to be another social media platform out there that can do this. You can use it on anything. I mean, on anything. Like, it works great on my Kindle Paperwhite. In fact, Twitter allows me, that's how the Kindle Paperwhite 3G in particular. An awesome piece of tech, an incredible piece of tech. It has built-in, totally free AT&T 3G. The problem is that, at least it's free in the United States. There are like rates that you pay if you go outside of the United States. But anyway, with it, technically, you can only use, you can only go to Amazon.com, the Kindle store, or Wikipedia on a 3G network. If you hook it up to Wi-Fi, you can go anywhere. But anyway, with Twitter, there's a way to link your Twitter account to your Kindle. And if you go to that, if you go to link the account, it actually takes you to the Twitter page. And this is if you're on 3G. And you can click a little icon in like the top left of the page that it takes you to link your account. And you can actually get to Twitter. And from Twitter, you can just type in web addresses, like go to google.com, and then you can just surf the whole web on 3G, totally free. It's awesome. I mean, so there's that there's an incredible reason for Twitter to exist alone, is to have free internet, on a device that's, $120 or, I guess with 3G, it's $150. But there's a lot of other things too, that really makes Twitter shine. On Android, I can't speak for iOS, but on Android, when you run Tor, when you run the Onion router on Android, and it runs really, really well. You have to use an app called Orbot to do that. And we'll be talking about this. I also have another special lined up, which is how to make your Android device go dark, meaning how to make it like really secure and anonymous. It'll be a pretty, a decently lengthy special because there's a lot of info to cover, but it is possible, and it's the best device really to even do it. So anyway, when there's an app called Orbot, which allows Tor to work on your device, on your Android device. And you can actually configure, Orbot gives you the port to manually put into the Twitter app that'll allow Twitter to run over Tor. I mean, that's awesome. And Twitter has no problems with VPNs, including VPNs that you run on your Android devices, as to where Facebook and Google Plus can get a little flaky. A lot of apps can get really flaky when you run a VPN on an Android device, which I still recommend using a VPN when you're on one. But anyway, so Twitter just has so many advantages, and I can't see, and it's all part of its open nature, and so I can't really see any other company coming out with that. In fact, a lot of companies, I think, would take a lot of the open nature, the openness of the APIs, all this stuff for Twitter, and they would actually say that they're problems instead of being like really great things, which I think they're really great things. So anyway, so Twitter is always going to be part of the program with Sovryn Tech. Getting back to the original question, Twitter is always going to be part of the program here. And do I recommend Twitter to everybody? Absolutely. I mean, the anonymity that Twitter allows for. I mean, you don't have to use there's very little sign-in information. You don't have to use your, real name for anything, on there. And, there's a lot of great ways to configure it. It works with almost everything. I mean, almost any website has some kind of, Twitter compatibility, which is, just phenomenal. So Twitter's always going to be here. Might there be a social media venue down the line that, that Sovryn Tech may make use of, or that I might find personally fulfilling and useful? Maybe, maybe not, because I'm finding more and more that social media is just crap. But anyway, so no, we're not going to do a flavor of the month social media thing. Twitter's going to be around for a while. But we'll see. Anyway, I'll be back with more. This is Sovryn Tech.
Hey, look! Got an energy spike.
Launch.
In the third age of mankind, an age plagued by an evil empire that seeks to destroy humanity, it is our last, best hope for peace. It is Babylon 5.
All fighter squadrons launched.
Return fire.
Well, freeze them!
Watch Babylon 5.
You can watch Babylon 5 and experience the greatest show in television history. See the entire series completely free by going to thewb.com/shows/Babylon 5.
Software of the Week.
It is time for Software of the Week, where I cover pieces of software or apps, that I find particularly useful, or something that's very interesting, or sometimes it's something that's just, junk, like Google Hangouts. But anyway, this week, this is something that I see as really up and coming, and maybe pretty popular pretty soon. Of course, it may completely fail. I mean, that's the nature of pretty much anything, especially in the technology world. But what we have is Google Play Games. Now, and it's an app, okay? And what this is it doesn't work with every game, but if you know what Xbox Live is, or the PlayStation Network, kind of picture that, but for Android games. And it's made by Google. And that's exactly what this is. Now, it looks like, pretty much every other Google app now with that card design. And it does sync up with Google Plus. Like, it requires Google Plus. You can't, you're not going to use it without Google Plus. And, it has and actually, that's why I mentioned in the last segment that, I do have a Google Plus account. It's actually specifically just so I can use Google Play Games. As far as games that use it, because again, it allows for achievements, it allows for multiplayer. I mean, most of these, except for the achievements, anything that Google Play Games adds to a game is usually already built into the game. Like one of the big ones right now, and just a tremendous game for Android, Riptide GP2, which is like a jet ski game. That is really integrated into Google Play Games. But other than the achievements, you can do it all, right inside the game anyway. You can still do multiplayer in the game. But it's pretty nice because actually it'll do cloud saves as well, which that's something. So it's not just the achievements, I'm sorry. But with Google Play Games, it allows for cloud saves of games. And in fact, with Riptide GP2, you get right to the start screen and it asks you for your Google Plus, info. So this is going to become a big deal. or at least it's going to try to be. And Google Plus hasn't died yet. So, I don't see Google quitting on Google Play Games anytime soon. But maybe, the Nexus Q, they dropped that like yesterday's newspaper. Anyway, but other games, Raiden Legacy works for it. Galaxy on Fire 2, works within it. There's a few, and they'll keep adding. Like Raiden Legacy, that's a game I've had on my phone forever, and it it got updated to where it worked within Google Play Games. So even games that have been around for a couple of years, they may just release an update for them now to where they will work with Google Play Games. And you can start the game right from there, and you can kind of do a modified version, not so annoying version of Hangouts on it, within the app itself. It's a really, I'm impressed, and I think it's big thinking. Because Xbox Live, obviously, to many, it's a success, right? And not to say that this is so much copying it, but, because one could make the argument that Xbox Live is just copying BattleNet from the 90s, right? But, it's a way of making gaming serious on Android. And I've talked about that. It seems like the past maybe 3-4 episodes, I've constantly talked about during Game Talk about how, look, Android gaming is up and coming. And this is where, if you want to get in on where people are going to be really playing big time, this is the place to be. Because, with this, you're doing multiplayer over 3G. You could be anywhere and you're doing multiplayer. That's so crazy. So Google Play Games, there's a link for it in the show notes. You can go to sovryntech.com or sovryntech.com/sovryntech or in your podcast app and you'll see it there and you can check it out. I'll be back with more.
What does freedom mean? Tune in to LRN.FM to find out. LRN.FM is the Liberty Radio Network, a collection of live talk radio and podcasts, all coming from a principled pro-liberty perspective. LRN.FM show hosts aren't left, right, or conspiracy kooks. You can tune in 24/7 to LRN.FM via your phone, computer, satellite, and more. Listen free anytime at LRN.FM. That's LRN.FM.
Brian! Stop playing those video games!
Just a minute, Mom.
Game Talk.
It is time for Game Talk, as usual, my favorite part of the show, where we talk about video games, and again, thank you all for saying, that you really enjoy the segment. There was a time early on where I thought, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to ditch Game Talk because it's not really, it's not so perhaps liberty oriented. Not to say that something has to be liberty oriented to be on Sovryn Tech, but it's a big part of the identity of the show, and it's a big part of my identity. I'm an anarchist, but anyway, thank you for letting me know. So Game Talk is here to stay. In fact, like I've mentioned in the past couple episodes, that I may be adding in a Game of the Week section where, I talk about being an Android game or, a PC game or some Nintendo game or something, that's really hot and exciting. Anyway, we're going to finish off a cliffhanger. And this happens sometimes. The show runs on an exact time. It's like literally almost always literally an hour and 45 minutes. And I do that for a lot of reasons. One is to get to be in practice of trying to say things succinctly, and trying to be cohesive inside of a certain time frame. And it just, the show flows good when there's a consistency that, I think it's easier to listen to. And that's my, main concern is, how are the listeners going to react to it? So, but there's sometimes in that where I don't, sometimes a topic deserves a little more attention and it doesn't get it. Or sometimes a topic gets too much attention, too much time. And, I have to start not that I ever do filler, but I have to come up with something to say. Anyway, last week we were talking about there was an article, and the article is in the show notes again this week, just so you can read it. But it was a woman from Kotaku, who I think it was Patricia Hernandez, and she was saying that, she was saying that, she was talking about multiplayer gaming, kind of the evolution, the history of multiplayer gaming, and how there is this kind of a culture inside of the gaming world that wants to get back to, or that complains about modern multiplayer gaming where everything is, totally online. And it's not like back in the GoldenEye days with the Nintendo 64 in the 90s, where you were sitting in the room with, 4 or however many people. You had 4 controllers hooked up to the same television and you were all playing on the same television. And that aspect has gone away. And so some people feel like you're not connecting with humans anymore. Everything's, just out in cyberspace and nobody's real, whatever, those kind of complaints. And she was saying that, no, I don't agree with that at all, that she very much enjoyed, modern multiplayer gaming, where even if she is technically cold and alone in a dark room, she is playing with other people online, even though they may be to some degree faceless or emotionless. And she made claims that, hey, if nobody has to come over, then you don't have to clean up after everybody, or you don't have to worry about having food and drink for everybody. Everybody, it's bring your own good time when everybody just plays online and nobody's actually in the same room with each other. So she had a lot of critiques of the whole idea. To her credit, she said that, she's very young. And so she didn't experience the time when multiplayer gaming meant people being in the room with you, especially on consoles. Now, there's LAN parties too, which that's another story. But anyway, and so I read the bulk of the article, and it was a very long article, and so I didn't get to my thoughts on it. And, I asked, I open question to the listeners, hey, do you have thoughts on multiplayer gaming? What do you think? No one really replied to that, and that's fine. That's okay. So, because maybe nobody cares, maybe some people just, don't bother with multiplayer gaming. I don't do a whole lot of it, on a personal, level anymore. But, I do multiplayer gaming in other regards. But anyway, her thoughts, she was saying that modern multiplayer gaming is fine. And I kind of agree, that it is okay. I don't mind it. I really wish, maybe my only big critique of modern multiplayer gaming is that there's not enough fighting games, like your Street Fighters, your Mortal Kombats, that have a really great multiplayer aspect to them. That just doesn't seem to really be there. It's there, but it's not so well thought out and is so well developed as, say, for something like Battlefield 4 or the Battlefield series. Battlefield 4 is the one that's coming out in October. Or your Call of Duties, where that's so integral. People are kind of treated as an afterthought. And that's okay, but I feel that both of them are pretty valid. I do, now granted I'm older, I'm 32 years old, and I do remember playing GoldenEye, at a buddy's house, with 8 of us there, and, we're taking turns. The only thing I didn't like about it, now I was doing multiplayer gaming before that. I was doing online multiplayer gaming before GoldenEye came out in, 96, 97, whatever. I was playing Rise of the Triad, with my uncle over a modem, over a phone modem. And, the thing I didn't like about being in the same room with everybody and sharing the computer was that you could see what the other person, you'd have screen watchers. And this can happen at LAN parties too, depending on how it's set up. But you'd have screen watchers where they'd see where you're hiding, if you're going to snipe them or something. And I didn't like that. So there's something to be said for not being in the same room. But then at the same time, there was a while where I worked at Par Technologies. And when I was at Par, we would use, Par's network, and we would be, we'd be quite a few feet away from each other, but we'd all be in the same general area. We'd crank up WHkAeJ. And yeah, we were getting paid. We'd crank up WHkAeJ, and it was great. It was perfect because we could kind of we could hear each other laughing when someone, got a really good kill, even though I don't like that language. And, you could do a little smash mouth, to each other. Well, and people had no idea what you were doing. It's like, wow, they're just coming up with crazy jokes. So there is really something to being in the same area with people and effectively, I guess, being in the same room. But I definitely don't like the screen sharing thing. Interestingly, that was such a big problem of people that were screen watching that the original Xbox, not the 360 or the One, but the original Xbox, was designed to link Xboxes, 4 of them. And I went to tournaments years ago where they did this, and they were playing Republic Commando. You'd have 4 televisions and you'd have 4 Xboxes, and then, that way people could just link up and you wouldn't have all these screen watchers. Or it was also, you could still have the screen watchers and you could play with 16 people in the same room, which was pretty awesome. That got intense, no doubt about it. So anyway, so my thoughts on it are, yeah, I don't like the fact that people don't get together. And this is a common critique of social media too, not just multiplayer gaming, in that, people are just data now, it seems. You're not really getting, you're not really there with the person. You're not getting the feel of the person being there. You're not getting so many, sensory perceptions that normally you can get when you're in the room with somebody. And so, I think that is missing. But really the answer to all this is that the game developers should just kind of cater to all, to all sides. That's something actually that's been missing from the PC market is multiplayer on-screen gaming. I'd love to see that. So her points are valid, but yeah, I do yearn for the days when everybody was in the same room. That was pretty great. Anyway, I'll be back with more. This is Sovryn Tech.
Are you searching for a mouth-watering, all-natural, sweet and sticky treat? What if I told you it was also made by a chef who believes in freedom, just like you? You're not dreaming. This is real. Head over to mandrik.com. That's MANDRIK.com. There, you'll find Georgia's famous baklava in classic and dark chocolate flavors. To those with special health needs, Georgia's famous baklava also has a treat for you. Golden delicious, low-carb, gluten-free almond cookies. Order with PayPal or Bitcoins. In just a few days, your sweet treats will await you right at your doorstep. One more time, that's MANDRIK.com for Georgia's famous baklava. Hacker Stories.
It is time for Hacker Stories, where I cover pretty much security issues. Not to say that they're totally relegated to this section of the show. Sometimes they're big enough that they get talked about at the opening of the show, like this week, where we talked about cars getting hacked and controlled to where, a person with a laptop and some kind of wireless connection to the computer of the car could do anything with the car and, essentially treat it like a robot. But we talk about hackers and hacker stories. Sometimes we tell actual stories. Other times we're doing, we're sharing, news stories that, have to do with people that I consider heroes. I think hackers are heroes. And school's out on Edward Snowden, but by and large, I mean, just revealing PRISM was definitely a heroic act. I know I have some listeners, and I've heard other shows that have said that they're suspicious and that they think he's actually, just part of the conspiracy, and that he released PRISM under orders from the NSA and not outside of orders with the NSA, but whatever. Anyway, this story is slightly related to PRISM. I try not to talk about PRISM so much because, I mean, it's just like every day there's something new and you just go, holy shit. And like the fact that the answer isn't instantaneously, okay, it's time to end government now, blows my mind. That's not true, or that's not the first thought that crosses people's mind. So I mean, just so much of the PRISM stories are just redundant in their content, really. Though, like when xIdzbD score and all this stuff comes out, I mean, that's kind of interesting. But this is sort of a side effect of what's going on with PRISM. And this story is from RT.com. And it's Mega, that is in Kim.com's Mega, to run cutting-edge encrypted email after lava pit's privacy seppuku. Kim.com is working on a highly secure email service to run on a non-U.S. based server. It comes as the U.S. squeezes email providers that offer encryption, and Mega CEO calls LavaBit's shutdown an honorable act of privacy seppuku. Mega's chief executive Vikram Kumar, who is heading the development of the company's own end-to-end encryption technology to protect the privacy of the future email's users, has reacted to the LavaBit founder's decision to suspend his service's operations, an act which was shortly followed by voluntary closing down of another secure email service, Silent Circle. These are acts of privacy seppuku, honorably and publicly shutting down, quote-unquote, suicide, rather than being forced to comply with laws and courts intent on violating people's privacy, Kumar said in his blog post. The concept he was referring to was developed by secure service providers such as CryptoCloud, which made a corporate seppuku pledge to oppose the mass surveillance and shield the privacy of their users' data. The name for the move apparently derives from a Japanese ritual suicide, which was originally practiced by samurai to preserve honor. According to CryptoCloud team's board, post cited by Kumar, corporate seppuku is shutting down a company rather than agreeing to become an extension of the massive, ever-expanding, secretive global surveillance network organized by the U.S. National Security Agency. This way, if the company receives a secret order from the NSA to become a real-time participant in ongoing blanket secret surveillance of its customers, it will not be forced into doing it. The pledge it made to its users will make it terminate itself instead, thus making the data mining impossible. Such a policy manifests that there is always a choice for any company approached by the agents, while at the same time placing the user's security in the highest priority. Owner and operator of LavaBit.com, Ladar Levison, on Thursday wrote that his 9-year-old encrypted email service was shutting down in order to avoid becoming complicit in crimes against the American people. We see the writing on the wall, and we have decided that it is best for us to shut down Silent Mail now, Silent Circle founder John Kellis then wrote in a blog post. But as CryptoCloud urged all companies to make an ultimate privacy-protecting pledge, NSA leaker Edward Snowden said in an email to The Guardian that the internet giants are unlikely to join such action, although it could yield much greater results. He called for Google and Facebook to question their current stance, calling LavaBit's owner's decision inspiring. Employees and leaders at Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Yahoo, Apple, and the rest of our internet titans must ask themselves why they aren't fighting for our interests the same way small businesses are. The defense they have offered to this point is that they were compelled by laws they do not agree with, but one day of downtime for the coalition of their services could achieve what 100 LavaBits could not, Snowden said. Meanwhile, Kumar has been involved in an email service project with what he says is exceptional level of encryption. Mega has been doing an exciting but very hard and time-consuming job of developing both highly secure and functional email service, Kumar told ZDNet. The biggest tech hurdle is providing email functionality that people expect, such as searching emails that are trivial to provide if emails are stored in plain text or available in plain text on the server side. If all the server can see is encrypted text, as is the case with true end-to-end encryption, then all the functionality has to be built client-side, he explained, adding that even Silent Circle did not try to achieve such a feat. On this and other fronts, Mega is doing some hugely cutting-edge stuff. There's probably no one in the world who takes the Mega approach of making true crypto work for the masses, our core proposition, Kumar said. According to the company's founder.com, Mega doesn't hold decryption keys to customer accounts and never will, thus making it impossible for it to read the emails. This also means that Mega by design cannot be forced to rat on its users by intelligence agencies. However, .com earlier told Torrent Freak that a new spy legislation being pushed by the U.S. and its Five Eyes Alliance partners, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, well, that's the Commonwealth of Nations. That's weird. May force Mega to relocate its servers to some country exempt from such jurisdictions such as Iceland. The New Zealand government is already aggressively eyeing legislation that will compel all internet service providers in the country to design a secret decryption access for the intelligence agencies, he said. Okay, so, here's the escalation. You find out about PRISM, and then companies say, okay, well, we're going to figure out how to make things more private. Then the NSA will figure out how to access those, quantum computers or who knows what. And then, there'll be more escalation. And I got to admit, I'm actually, my stance on privacy, or at least on anonymity, and there is a difference. My stance on anonymity has become a little more stringent than it used to be. I used to be like, I don't care, whatever, just look at me. Now, to some degree, I think maybe I'm just reacting and I want to be a jerk to the NSA and say, yeah, go ahead and try and read my stuff. But, I'm definitely falling more into the desire for anonymity camp of technologists, of people that use technology. And so, but the escalation is a concern. Like when is this going to stop? And like, what could be done in, like, what could the brains that are working on Mega's, super secret email, super encrypted email system, what could be developed by using that brain power somewhere else that could possibly be more constructive? Maybe nothing, but it's a thought to consider. I am impressed by these companies saying, look, if the government comes up to us and says, nope, let us in, they'll just shut down. I think that's incredibly impressive for them to do. I don't see Google or Microsoft or Facebook or Yahoo or Apple doing anything of the sort. That they never will. And in fact, like Snowden's suggestion that if they just shut down for a day, that it would solve all this. That reminds me very much of like the recommendation that, well, if everybody just stopped buying gas for a day, this whole oil cartel would shut down or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. And again, I don't see these companies doing that. That in many ways, that almost effectively shut down the internet. So many of these services are integrated, which I guess is the point, to get that across. But anyway, keep an eye out for this email if you want, but I get the sense that that if it does go up, because there's other companies too recently that are coming up with email solutions like StartPage, and I'm not seeing, like, they're supposed to be out there now and they're not. So I think a lot of these guys are just shutting down instead. Honorable of them, but anyway, don't bet the bank on them. I'll be back with
more. Oh, yeah. This is Stephanie Murphy, Sovryn Tech Producer. You may know me from this show, but did you know that I have my own podcast? It's called Pork Therapy. Pork Therapy is a bit different from other shows. We cover current events, big ideas, and even relationship issues, all through the lens of how we can get more freedom in our lives. Oh, and you'll love Sex and Science Hour. Join me on my website, porktherapy.com. That's porctherapy.com. Now back to Sovryn Tech.
doing? I can't believe I caught you again. You know, Jesus doesn't approve of this little habit of yours.
I know, baby, I know it's wrong, but it feels so right.
Well, it ain't.
But I've been doing it since I was 12 years old.
It's nothing but a sinful perversion of nature, if you ask me.
But baby, I don't ever want to stop looking at tech websites, new gadgets, video games, software, or any of that stuff.
Well, then I'm leaving.
Okay. Bye.
Pick of the week.
It is time for Pick of the Week, where I get to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. It could be, a topic. It could be a movie. It could be a TV show, music, some new album or something out there. You name it. It can be literally anything. And this week I want to talk about something that I'm very, very passionate about, and I've been passionate about for a pretty good chunk of my life. In fact, really before it's seen its kind of mainstream push as of late, as of the past 5-6 years, and it's parkour. Parkour, and or also known like free running. This is where commonly people think of it as like people just running down the street doing a bunch of backflips off of like stairwells and all this stuff. But it's really a lot more than that. And I really love parkour. In fact, I think, there's people who talk about like how yoga is very beneficial to their life, their mental well-being, their physical well-being, things like that. I think parkour falls under that category where it can just be so all-consuming in how it enhances your life. And it has absolutely nothing to do with people flipping around, or doing all these kind of like wild moves. Parkour is, quite simply the art of getting from point A to point B in the most efficient means possible, the quickest and most efficient, by using your own, by using the human body. Like parkour doesn't allow for race cars. Okay. And it was created by David Bell, like in the 90s, who he apparently learned it from his dad, who was a Legionnaire, he was in the French army, I guess. And David Bell's a Frenchman. And David Bell's still doing it. In fact, he's very popular in some movies, like I think it's District 13. There's a couple of those. I think the other one's District 13 Ultimatum. Him, and I think there was another guy too who was recently in the James Bond movie Casino Royale. And they've really kind of, that a lot of that stuff is what popularized it, was its existence in these movies. Parkour was also part of the stage show for a recent Madonna tour. Where people are doing like they're doing Kongs, which Kong is a move, a popular move in parkour, where your feet, you're pushing yourself off by your hands and your feet are ahead of you, and you're leaping over something. Anyway, so it's a discipline, and it's been around for a while, and just pretty recently it's seen some real mainstream push. It looks like ninjas running around, which obviously that's attractive to me because I've wanted to be a ninja my whole life. And I know, right? It sounds crazy, but no, seriously, I wanted to be a ninja. That was part of my attraction to the character of Batman, is because he was effectively a ninja, and he was a really super intelligent ninja. So you can see where I would find all that interesting. Anyway, so it looks like people, kind of running around like ninjas to some degree. But a lot of that, flash. In fact, there's a phrase called pure parkour, where that's people saying that, pure parkour is literally just falling under the exact definition of parkour of you going from point A to point B in the quickest and most efficient way possible by using your human body. So like flips, and all this, wild moves, that really look awesome and require tremendous athleticism that I really appreciate. A a flip may not be necessary. That might not be the most efficient way to get there. In fact, 9 times out of 10, it isn't. Again, that's all for flash. It's all for show, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong, with wanting to be a show off or whatever. I think that's fine. And so there's like a split in terms. So you're kind of getting a 101 here on parkour. There's a split in terms. There's the idea that all of that flash, all of that, really impressive looking stuff, not designed to go from point A to point B as quickly as possible, but just designed to like look awesome, which it does. That's called free running. But then there's still, what David Bell teaches, which is parkour, which, is all about that flow, flow like water is the phrase for it. And just getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And, I definitely like the parkour stance a lot more, than the free running. Because the free running doesn't add a whole lot, in my opinion, to you, but the parkour does, where you're literally thinking. Because when you practice parkour a lot, okay, you become very, very aware of what your body can do, for one, and maybe even you develop new skills of what your body can do. But it develops a certain like sensory, suddenly you can feel. Like say you're standing next to like there's a little rail, a little bar rail, like at some, like inner city garden or something. Suddenly it's almost like your ankle can sense that bar is there. And there's actually, I can't think of it now, sadly, but there's a scientific term for that, like some kind of athletic awareness or muscle awareness. But anyway, so you develop that, but then parkour, when you really get into that and you really get into the mentality where, and you practice it all the time and you kind of live it and breathe it. You get this mentality that develops where you want everything done as quickly and efficiently as possible. Not at the cost of the moment, because that's a big, not at the cost of, doing things so quickly that you don't appreciate it or something. Because one of the other important aspects of parkour is that you feel everything that you're doing. Okay. But what it does is you get this awareness and you kind of get this like attitude where you want everything done smoothly and quickly and efficiently. And it'll just happen everywhere. It'll happen at work. You'll kind of move and walk differently. You're not doing flips in the middle of of a hallway or anything. Though there are people that do that. But, there's like YouTube videos where you can see people doing that. But just your whole awareness changes when you practice parkour. And you definitely feel, a connection with everything around you. And it's not one of those like kind of woo-woo, though these aren't so woo-woo. There's science behind like getting connected with dirt. Dirt in nature, like biophilia and all that. That's not woo, but it's not one of these like, woo, feeling the spirit of nature and all this stuff. Because parkour, in a lot of ways is, for most people, it's seen mainly done in cities. Because there's so many, obstacles and so many ways to see it happen in cities, and cities are such a major part of life now. So it's not, so when I say you feel like this connection to everything around you, it's not like, it's not a woo-woo connection. It's just literally like you feel how everything can be traversed. And you get this, you even get like this kind of a really great timing in your head. Now that's something that can be developed through a lot of different, traits and disciplines that a person develops. But with parkour in particular, like I noticed years and years ago when I started practicing parkour, that like an internal clock started developing that was really good. I just knew, when I walked a certain distance, I knew exactly how long I took without looking at a clock. So, that happens. I mean, and all that's great. It's very healthy and it's great exercise. Parkour is great exercise when, you're moving, as efficiently, as fast as you can. I mean, and it's something now, a couple other points with it. Okay. There's a couple of critiques. One is that you can't, if you're like, older than 30, that, it's not for you. You can't do it. Or that if you're overweight, you can't do it. Or that if you're tall. All three of those are incorrect. You can definitely, because there's people who are becoming healthier than a lot of 18-year-olds who are in their 50s today, thanks to like the paleo lifestyle and other things. So that's just not true. And just the rate at which, like, especially if you're into the paleo lifestyle and the paleo diet, or the primal diet, primal lifestyle, whatever you want to call it. You really, your 30s turns into your teens again, or at least your 20s. Really, that it's just, I've heard too many, anecdotal, fine, but I've just heard it from too many freaking people that, and I feel it too. I feel like physically, I feel 18. And, recently I've even gotten, statements from people where they thought I was in my, early 20s. Awesome. Anyway, but anyway, so no, you do not hit, if you're over 30, yes, you can still totally learn parkour. Overweight and too tall, neither are accurate. I practice parkour, genuine parkour, and I'm 6'1". I'm a big guy, in every way. I'm not fat, but I'm a big guy. And so you can definitely be a big guy and practice parkour. There's nothing that'll stop you from that. Gravity gravity won't bend, but gravity will answer, if you're flowing like water, gravity's, going to answer to you, and it's fine. You can still do the moves. As far as being overweight, there's YouTube videos of this guy who looks to be, he's pretty good sized, and I'm not insulting him, but he's a big guy, and he's doing straight up parkour, and it's beautiful. He is flowing like water. His moves are flowing like water. So, that's not true either. You can practice parkour. As far as, there's another critique that, it only works in like cities. Not at all. Again, the whole point of this is like anarchy. Okay. Anarchism, all that means is without rulers. All that other stuff, that everybody else comes up with is just like arguments back and forth. Okay. Anarchy is just quite simply without rulers, no gods, no masters. Okay. And parkour is the same thing. Parkour is, again, quite simply, using nothing other than the human body. You get from point A to point B in the most efficient and quickest way possible. There you go. And why does that have to be done in a city? It doesn't. It can be done outside. There's great videos more videos you can catch on YouTube where guys are doing it on like rock faces and it's beautiful to see, or they're doing it, over logs and everything out in deep forests. It's stunning to watch. And for you to personally practice, I think it is one of the most beneficial, one of the, next to a regular exercise routine, and maybe it becomes your regular exercise routine. I think parkour is just an essential human element that we can practice, and I definitely recommend it to people. Anyway, that's enough of that. You've been listening to Sovryn Tech. This is your double load. I will be hanging out in Michigan this weekend, but I will definitely see you. Don't worry. I will see you next week.
This has been Sovryn Tech. Visit us at sovryntech.com. That's SOVRYN tech.com. There you can connect with us, see more of what you've heard on today's show, and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is open source. We encourage you to share. Later, nerds.